The Amityville name drips with dread. One house, one crime, and decades of filmmakers clawing at the legend. What should have ended with a blood-soaked night in the 70s spiraled into a storm of sequels, remakes, and twisted offshoots. Some terrified audiences, some disgusted them, and some turned the curse into pure madness. Here's the real Amityville nightmare, waiting just for you. The franchise began here, and the shadow of this film still lingers over everything that came after. Directed by Stuart Rosenberg, the Amityville horror dramatized the story of George and Kathy Lutz, who claimed they were terrorized by an unseen presence inside the Long Island home where a brutal family murder had occurred. The film thrives on atmosphere. The image of those quarter-moon windows glowing at night became horror shorthand for evil itself. Audiences didn't need gore. They needed the slow tightening of dread, the strange voices demanding the family to get out, the black sludge oozing from faucets, and George Lutz's unraveling sanity. It was never just a haunted house story. It was about what happens when the safest place in the world, the family home, turns against you. Critics scoffed, but the box office numbers told another story. Horror fans embraced it, and the film's imagery etched itself into pop culture. Instead of continuing the Lutz saga, the second film dove back in time. Amityville 2. The Possession tells a version of the DeFeo murders, a family annihilation that stained the house long before George and Kathy ever moved in. Directed by Damiano Damiani, it mixes supernatural horror with raw human darkness. The Montelli family moves into the cursed house, and their eldest son Sonny becomes the target of possession. But before the demonic influence takes over completely, the film explores incest, domestic abuse, and the crushing toxicity within the family. The violence is shocking. Sonny's rampage with a shotgun, echoing the real DeFeo killings, leaves little to the imagination. This wasn't a film meant to comfort believers in haunted house fun. It was meant to disturb, to dig into taboos, to push Amityville from eerie to vile. Fans still argue over whether it's exploitative trash or the franchise's boldest statement. But nobody forgets it. The 3D craze of the early 80s swept up Amityville, and the result was this bizarre third installment. Released by Orion Pictures, it put the focus on a skeptical journalist named John Baxter, who buys the infamous house to prove it's not haunted. Of course, the evil doesn't care if he believes. The 3D gimmicks are what people remember. Flies buzzing straight toward the screen, objects flung into the audience, and a ghastly climax filled with demonic apparitions. Without the glasses, the scares collapse into camp. The plot feels thin and the execution clumsy. Still, it represents a turning point. This was the last Amityville film to hit theaters for decades, and it cemented the franchise's drift away from prestige horror into the realm of cult spectacle. Today, it's remembered less for its story than as a strange artifact of a fad that passed quickly. By the late 80s, the franchise was no longer about the house alone. Evil could spread, in this case, through a grotesque floor lamp shipped to California after a yard sale. Yes, the demon left the Amityville house inside a lamp. This TV movie follows a widow and her children as the cursed lamp wreaks havoc in their home. Birds are slaughtered, electronics go haywire, and evil spreads like a sickness. It's absurd, yet oddly effective in showing how flexible the Amityville curse could be. For many horror fans, this was the moment the franchise officially jumped into weird territory. No longer chained to the Long Island property, Amityville could now infest any object, anywhere. That idea would fuel much of the series in the 90s. This Canadian entry barely resembles the earlier films. Shot cheaply and released direct-to-video, It follows a group of friends who buy an abandoned house, unaware of its sinister history. Unlike earlier installments, the house here isn't the classic Dutch colonial with its glowing windows. It's a random property tied vaguely to the Amityville lore. The scares lean on ghostly visions, creaky sound design, and whispers of a priest's murder years earlier. Fans often forget about the Amityville curse, but it matters for one reason. It showed that the Amityville name itself had become the brand. Even without the iconic house, slapping Amityville on the title was enough to market a film. The curse had gone corporate. Then came the clock. In this direct-to-video oddity, a suburban family inherits a cursed antique clock salvaged from the Amityville house. As soon as it ticks inside their home, time itself begins to warp. The evil doesn't just haunt, it manipulates. Time loops, distorted visions, and nightmarish realities twist the family into chaos. Unlike the Lamp movie, It's About Time had a surprising amount of ambition. It explored the idea of evil not just infecting people, but bending reality itself. Though dismissed on release, it's now considered one of the better Amityville sequels. It commits to its bizarre premise with confidence, proving that even absurd, cursed objects could still carry genuine menace if handled right. The cursed object theme continued, this time with a haunted mirror. A struggling photographer is gifted the mirror, which once hung inside the Amityville house. As expected, it begins to drive him and those around him into madness. This film leans into psychological horror. The mirror doesn't just spook people. It reflects twisted versions of reality, drawing victims deeper into their own fears. The grittier urban setting gives it a different feel from suburban haunts, but it still carries that same sense of inescapable evil spreading outward from Amityville. It's often overshadowed by It's About Time, but for fans who tracked the series through the 90s, a new generation felt like another eerie experiment. By this point, the franchise had proven that anything tied to Amityville could become cursed. Furniture, clocks, mirrors, you name it. The last of the cursed object cycle. Dollhouse centers on a miniature replica of the Amityville home. A father builds it for his daughter, only to unleash evil on the entire family. This one doubles down on surreal visuals. The dollhouse doesn't just sit there. It acts as a portal, bleeding its horrors into reality. Children transform. Visions blur the line between the real house and the toy, and the family falls apart under its influence. As the final entry of the 90s run, Dollhouse has a strange reputation. Some call it the weakest of the cursed object stretch. Others admire its attempt at dreamlike, almost surreal horror. Either way, it closed a chapter. By the late 90s, the franchise was exhausted, but the Amityville name wasn't going away. It was waiting for revival. After nearly a decade of silence, the house returned to theaters in a big way. Platinum Dunes, Michael Bay's horror production company, revived the Amityville horror for a modern audience. Directed by Andrew Douglas, the film cast Ryan Reynolds as George Lutz and Melissa George as Kathy. From the start, it was clear this wasn't going to be a slow-burn haunting like the 1979 original. The remake charges forward with intensity. Reynolds' George descends into paranoia and rage much faster, his personality splitting as the evil digs in. He swings axes, stalks the family, and becomes more of a direct threat than the unseen house itself. The film looks slick. Dark cinematography, quick pacing, and sharp editing place it in line with early 2000s remakes like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 2003, and The Hills Have Eyes, 2006. Critics panned it for lacking subtlety, but the movie worked with audiences. It grossed nearly $108 million worldwide, proving that Amityville wasn't dead. just waiting for the right packaging. For many younger horror fans, this remake was their first taste of the Amityville story. It didn't replace the original, but it ensured the cursed house still mattered in the 21st century. The next big shift came with the found footage trend. By 2011, paranormal activity had become a phenomenon, and the asylum, notorious for its low-budget knockoffs, decided Amityville needed the same treatment. The Amityville haunting follows a new family moving into the infamous house, with much of the footage supposedly shot by their teenage son. Things spiral through surveillance-style jump scares, shaky handhelds, and sudden supernatural attacks. It's rough. The acting is flat, the visuals grainy, and the pacing uneven. But the film marks the first time the series leaned fully into found footage aesthetics. Instead of polished Hollywood horror, it tried to ground the curse in a real home video feel. Horror fans are divided. Some dismiss it as cheap exploitation, others appreciate it as a bizarre mashup of Amityville myth with the found footage craze. Either way, it kept the house alive in a time when horror had shifted toward realism and raw immediacy. This British production strays far from the Long Island house but keeps the name alive. Directed by Andrew Jones, the Amityville Asylum sets its story inside High Hopes Hospital, built on the site of the original house. The focus is on Lisa, a new employee who discovers that the asylum hides sinister secrets, including satanic cults and possessed patients. The film is heavy on atmosphere, dim hallways, eerie whispers, and oppressive dread. The budget is tiny, but Jones leans on claustrophobic tension rather than spectacle. It's not a fan favorite, but it matters in the franchise's timeline. By moving the story into a mental institution, it reframed Amityville as something that could infest more than just a house or objects. The evil became systemic, institutional rather than domestic. For viewers, the asylum setting may feel derivative, but the ambition to reframe the curse gives it a strange place in the canon. It's one of the few later entries trying to expand the mythology rather than parody it. If there's a film that shows how far the Amityville name could be stretched, it's Amityville Death House. Directed by Mark Polonia, known for ultra-low-budget horror, this one throws subtlety straight out the window. The plot revolves around witches, curses, and demonic spirits tied to the Amityville legacy. Practical gore effects dominate, with cheap but enthusiastic monster designs and bloody set pieces. The acting is campy, the dialogue clunky, but it never pretends to be anything more than exploitation horror. This entry doesn't scare so much as entertain through excess. For fans of schlock, it's fun in its own trashy way. For others, it's a reminder of how far the brand had drifted from the eerie menace of 1979. By now, Amityville wasn't about a house, it was a license for chaos. The same year delivered the Amityville Playhouse, another small-budget oddity. A group of friends inherits an old theater, only to discover its cursed connection to Amityville. The setting is unique: dusty auditoriums, rotting props, and endless backstage corridors. But the execution leans on recycled tropes. Hauntings manifest as jump scares, ghostly figures, and whispered warnings. What sets it apart is its attempt to merge Amityville's curse with stage theatrics, blurring performance and possession. While largely forgotten outside hardcore horror circles, it's notable for showing how versatile the Amityville name had become. By 2015, the curse wasn't bound to geography at all. A playhouse across the continent could carry the evil just as easily as a suburban home. This entry blends found footage with a split timeline. Directed by Enrique Couto, Amityville. No escape alternates between a modern-day group filming a project in the woods and a woman in the 1990s experiencing the horrors of the Amityville house. The dual narrative adds texture. The modern storyline resembles Blair Witch-style survival horror, while the past timeline anchors the film back to the house itself. The connection between the two grows clearer as the curse spreads across eras. Though obscure, No Escape feels more ambitious than many of its direct-to-video peers. It tries to reintroduce the house as a central figure while still experimenting with genre trends. For a franchise often dismissed as incoherent, this one at least aimed for structure. By 2017, Exorcism films were saturating horror, and Amityville wasn't going to miss the wave. Amityville Exorcism, again from Mark Polonia, combines demonic possession with the lingering curse of the house. Here, a father must save his daughter after she becomes possessed by the evil linked to Amityville. The film's production is bare bones. Minimal sets, limited effects, and performances that swing between earnest and camp. What makes it stand out is the sheer audacity of merging two horror subgenres. Amityville wasn't just about haunted houses anymore. It was about demonic infestations and spiritual warfare. For some, it's bottom-of-the-barrel exploitation. For others, it's a strange curiosity showing how elastic the franchise had become. The last major theatrical attempt to revive the name came with Amityville. The Awakening. Produced by Dimension Films and Blumhouse, it starred Bella Thorne, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Cameron Monaghan. This was meant to reintroduce Amityville to a mainstream audience. A single mother moves her family into the cursed house, hoping its low price will help them financially. Her son, left comatose from an accident, begins to show signs of revival. But the improvement is linked to something sinister inside the walls. The film is slickly shot, then filled with familiar Blumhouse beats. Eerie visions, escalating dread, and possession-driven violence. However, repeated delays and reshoots hurt its momentum. By the time it was released, horror fans were skeptical. Despite the lukewarm reception, Awakening is important. It represents Hollywood's last serious attempt to make Amityville relevant in modern theaters. It didn't spark a new era, but it kept the house flickering in the genre's consciousness. The Amityville franchise in the 2000s and 2010s became a patchwork of styles and intentions. Some tried to revive the legend with Hollywood polish, others mined it for cheap scares, and a few reached for originality in unexpected places. The Amityville curse proved one thing: it can adapt to any era. Haunted houses, cursed objects, found footage, exorcisms. The brand absorbed them all. Which Amityville movie is your favorite? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to click like and subscribe for more horror breakdowns.